promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and 1 p.m. in Port Novo. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and across the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, the headlines. Citizens groups and candidates in Senegal make propositions as debate surrounding the upcoming presidential election continues to intensify.
Je propose que l'élection se tienne le 3 mars 2024 avec la proclamation provisoire des résultats le 8 mars.
I propose that the presidential election be held on March 3rd, 2024. The electoral campaign period should be reduced to 10 days instead of 21.
Doit être ramené à 10 jours au lieu de 21 jours.
A new opposition coalition highly critical of transition in Mali emerges and demands urgent steps to return to civilian rule. Governor Obasanjo of Kaduna State, northwest Nigeria, highlights the necessity of implementing state policing following a recent attack that killed 12 people.
We are looking at some particular areas that we believe need to be amended in our own constitution for us to move our country forward. And security, in my opinion, is the number one area that we need to look into, because if we don't address the problem of security, we cannot be able to address most of the developmental areas in our own country.
And the Gambia marks its 59th independence anniversary with citizens' call for improved social amenities, including healthcare and education. Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Ghana and Liberia. We'll begin this edition of Newslink in Senegal, where the debate continues on the format and terms of the discussions to arrive at a consensual electoral calendar. After the cancellation of the postponement of the presidential election by the Constitutional Council, Senegalese President Macky Sall announced a dialogue for the organization of the election as soon as possible. Political actors remain divided on the format and terms of this consultation. WADR's Nader Tete reports.
The debate surrounding Senegal's upcoming presidential election continues to intensify, with various propositions surfacing from citizens groups and candidates. The Arsono Election Citizen Movement demands that the discussions focus solely on adhering to the existing electoral calendar. They oppose any postponement and insist that the election be held no later than March 10th, even if a slight delay becomes necessary. Adding to the mix, presidential candidate Malik Gakou presented his own proposed electoral calendar during a press conference in Dakar.
Je propose que l'élection se tienne le 3 mars 2024 avec la proclamation provisoire des résultats le 8 mars.
I propose that the presidential election be held on March 3rd, 2024, with the provisional announcement of results on March 8th. Any challenges to the results should be submitted within 72 hours, and the review of appeals should take place 5 days after that. The official proclamation of results, if there is no runoff, should occur on March 17th. If a second round is necessary, it should take place on the second Sunday following. To facilitate this, the electoral campaign period should be reduced to 10 days instead of 21.
Doit être ramené à 10 jours au lieu de 21 jours.
Supporters of Bassirou Diomaye Faye, a candidate aligned with Ousmane Sonko, hold firm to the original deadline of April 2, marking the end of President Macky Sall's current term. This underscores their insistence on holding the elections within the established time frame. Meanwhile, some individuals within the governing party favor a wider national dialogue. Their aim is to foster consensus and ensure a smooth and peaceful election process. Adding another layer to the ongoing discourse, candidates who were unsuccessful in the previous election advocate for a revision of the electoral law. This implies a potential need to restart the electoral process following its revision.
Nader Tete reporting. In Mali, a new opposition coalition highly critical of the transition emerged over the weekend. Called the Synergy of Action for Mali, it brings together various groups and political parties, including the CMAs led by the influential religious leader Imam Mahmoud Dicko. In its initial statement, the coalition demanded the establishment of a civilian transition and condemned the poor governance of the military authorities in power. Tawfiq Abdel Nasser has more.
The Synergy of Action for Mali coalition comprises approximately 30 groups and political parties. According to Yusuf Daba Jawara, the coalition spokesperson, the transitional authorities have reached their limits in power management. The group insists on an immediate transition to civilian rule.
Our foremost priority is the immediate establishment of a civilian transition, entrusted with the responsibility of making every effort to expedite the organization of elections that are not only free, fair, and credible but also aimed at liberating the country from the current challenging situation. We perceive the actions taken by the transitional authorities as perilous, and we firmly believe that this is not the right path for Mali.
The coalition, through Yusuf Diamba Jawara, criticized the government and the military transition.
Corruption is still prevalent, as are nepotism and bad governance. I will give you an example of the problem of the National Energy Company, EDM. These are the actors who came during the transition and were arrested. I haven't seen an actor from the old regime who was arrested in relation to the EDM situation. So it shows that even the people who are here today talking about change are not doing it the right way.
The Synergy of Action for Mali has revealed plans for a series of upcoming actions through specific details yet to be disclosed. This new coalition joins the existing February 20 appeal to save Mali, established in May 2023. Both coalitions aim to address the challenges facing the country.
Tawfiq Abdel Nasser with that report. We remain in Mali because in the Sahel because the heads of the national electricity companies of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso will meet tomorrow, Tuesday, in Ouagadougou. These three nations are now under the coalition known as the Alliance of Sahel State AES, aim to address energy issues in their respective countries. The February 20 meeting is coming days after the recently held conference of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs for Bamako, Ouagadougou, and Niamey last week in Burkina Faso. Augustine Coley tells us more.
The Sahel States Alliance, comprising Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, shifts its focus towards energy issues after addressing security, economic, and diplomatic concerns. Energy company leaders from these countries will convene in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso on Tuesday and Wednesday to discuss solutions for the region's energy challenges. This two-day consultation meeting, organized by the Sahel States Alliance national electricity companies, aims to develop strategies for improving electricity supply. Key figures in the Sahel's energy sector will gather to address common challenges related to securing energy access, share best practices, and explore innovative solutions to meet the region's rising demand for electricity. The meeting's urgency is underscored by recent unprecedented and intermittent electricity outages in Mali and Niger. Moreover, Niger currently faces ECOWAS-imposed energy sanctions following its July 2023 military coup. This follows a weekend meeting in Niamey, where energy ministers from Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Togo, and Chad discussed regional energy challenges, potentially paving the way for future cooperation agreements.
Augustine Coley reporting there.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Remember, we're streaming live on WADR.org and on Facebook, WADR English Service. The 37th African Union AU Summit concluded in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia on Sunday with nearly 30 leaders in attendance. Oge Birika brings us highlights from that conference.
Key issues on the agenda included the continent's political and security situation, triggering concern from the AU. A major focus was the political crisis affecting several countries, particularly the threat of military coups destabilizing the continent. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Guinea, Gabon and Sudan were highlighted as nations currently outside the democratic path. The AU reaffirmed its zero-tolerance policy for military takeovers, pledging continued support for restoring constitutional order. The summit also addressed the ongoing conflict in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, emphasizing the need for enhanced regional security. Despite divisions on certain issues, including the situation in the DRC and tensions between Morocco and Algeria, Mauritania assumed the rotating presidency, taking over from the Comoros. This transition comes amid escalating political and security crises across Africa in recent months.
Ogebe Rika filed that report. Now, Gambians have called for improved social amenities, including healthcare and education, as the country marked its 59th anniversary. Some also voiced the need for increased employment opportunities for the youth. WADR's Sankule Janko Banjul has put the following report.
Since gaining independence from Great Britain on February 18, 1965, the nation's early aspirations for a better country persists. Yet, over half a century later, the Gambia grapples with the challenge of providing fundamental social amenities. Gambians on the streets of Banjul are demanding enhanced social services.
Education, health, and a lot more others. But priority areas, which is the outcry of many Gambians, is the living standard. So the government should try and improve on those areas a lot. The high unemployment rate.
After 59 years of independence, I think there are still a lot of things that Gambia as a nation has to improve on. This includes security. There are a lot of gaps which need to be filled in our health sectors. When you go to education, again, the same thing. Economic is I can say is the worst.
However, for Nurujan, while acknowledging the need for improvement across all sectors, there are aspects of the country that can be a source of pride.
I'm from the village, so when we were there growing up, we didn't have any means of, say, electricity. And now if you go back to where I am from, in fact, the light system is more stable there than here.
In his independence anniversary speech, President Barrow acknowledged the persistent problems facing the country, but called for collective efforts to address them.
We are bound to encounter difficulties, such as those imposed on us due to global developments. Price rises, shortages of essential commodities, and budgetary constraints should be expected. In such circumstances, we should unite personally and apply remedial measures. The government will always seek ways out of every difficulty that confronts the nation.
Despite the Gambia's ongoing challenges, including a weak economy, high living costs, inadequate health care, and youth unemployment, among others, Independence Day remains a moment for most Gambians to rejoice and renew their patriotism. For WADR, Sankule Janko Banjul.
Governor of Kaduna State, Northwest Nigeria, Uba Sani, has highlighted the necessity of implementing state policing to effectively address persistent insecurity in the northern regions. His comment comes after the weekend bandit attack in Gidan Dutse Mekiali village, resulting in 12 deaths and 9 injuries. The governor has indicated that calm has returned to the area as efforts are intensified to rescue the kidnapped and arrest the perpetrators. Kidnapping and banditry in Nigeria have prompted a shift in approach, with federal and state governments recognizing the need for state police to enhance security measures. Governor Sani, advocating for state policing for the past 6 months, argued, among others, that state police is crucial for intelligence gathering and supporting security agencies.
One of the components of restructuring is creating state police. If you recall, some of us have been advocating for the restructuring. We are looking at some particular areas that we believe need to be amended in our own constitution for us to move our country forward. And security, in my opinion, is the number one area that we need to look into, because if we don't address the problem of security, we cannot be able to address most of the developmental areas in our own country. Forget about when we're talking about supporting farmers to go to farm, improving our educational development, insisting that we look at the healthcare. We have to also look at the primary healthcare. But if you look at it, we must have security. Security, for me, is number one agenda of this government.
Governor Basani of Kaduna State, Northwest Nigeria. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal, and around the world on WADR.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Citizens, groups, and candidates in Senegal make propositions as the debate surrounding the country's upcoming presidential election continues to intensify. A new opposition coalition, highly critical of transition in Mali, emerges and demands urgent steps to return to civilian rule. The Gambia marks its 59th independence anniversary with citizens' call for improved and social amenities, including education and health. Ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and sports update. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Liberia and countries of the sub-region, including Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, have initiated discussions aimed at adopting a unified communication plan to popularize their national adoption plans with a focus on climate change issues. The event, held in collaboration with the Global National Adoption Plan Network, took place in Monrovia. WADR's Darlington Popper was there and filed this report.
For several underdeveloped countries, including Liberia, adaptation is a crucial approach to addressing the impacts of climate change. Building resilience and reducing vulnerabilities are therefore urgent matters. At the event, University lecturer Arthur Baker highlighted that formulating and implementing a national adaptation plan is crucial for Liberia to address climate change issues.
Liberia's national adaptation focuses on priority sectors, which include forestry, agriculture, coastal zones, waste, energy, and data fisheries. Those were the sectors that Liberia's national adaptation primarily focuses on. So the strategy must be able to communicate along these sectors, and they must come up with tailored messages that speak directly to these sectors. And in our nationally determined contributions, which is the Climate Change Action Plan of the country.
Head of the Environmental Protection Agency of Liberia, Professor Wilson Tape, noted that biodiversity, land use, and climate change were prioritized during the discussions. He expressed hope that the necessary funding will be secured to run the project.
We got together as a constituency to exchange a view on how we handle it. This kind of meeting is usually competitive, and so we are proud as EPA to have hosted that, and we are going to benefit from a lot of resources from Jeff.
Participants from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire also described the meeting as a success for the region.
I come from Ghana, and then I work for the Environmental Protection Agency, Ghana. I was here to represent the UNFCCC focal person of my country. The 4 days that I've spent here has been quite interesting because back at home I knew Jeff, but with this particular training workshop that I attended, I've had the opportunity to really understand and appreciate what Jeff really does.
A major goal for participants is to secure resources and policy enforcement to tackle climate change. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
Now to financial matters. 11 of 20 most economically dynamic countries in the world are in Africa this year, according to the African Development Bank, AFDB. The data contained in the bank's Africa Microeconomic Performance and Prospects report says Africa in 2024 emerges at the top of the ranking of 20 nations with the most dynamic economic growth. West Africa was also highlighted in that report.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
On our guest segment this afternoon is Morgan Asogba, an international relations expert and a Newslink contributor. In this brief chat with WADR, Asogba highlights major discussions from the just-ended 37th Africa Union Summit in Ethiopia, while outlining the challenges ahead for the presidency of Mohamed Ould Ghazouani, who, like his predecessor, is seeking re-election in Mauritania.
The various suggestions to sort out these issues have not been quite clear. And you know, this is institutional perspective. Most of the institutions, especially when it comes to a regional integration institution, have a limit access to how influential or impactful they could be when it comes to domestic matters and sometimes regional matters. So they have just limited themselves into making some key recommendations about the need of maintaining democratic environment in terms of leadership. And they also made some quite interesting recommendation about how leaders should maintain the respect of constitutional rules. But this does not solve the issue, because the issue is mostly about how do we make sure that the contextual challenges that each country is facing matches with the general idea of democracy. It appears that the general idea of democracy does not meet the need of the people that seems to be supportive to some of these coup leaders and even encouraging their way of transitioning. And this is what is quite difficult to be handled from an institutional perspective, especially when it comes to the African Union, which is quite limited in terms of actions and also in terms of funding, because when you look at how much funding the African Union gets from external partners, it is difficult for the African Union to have the needed credibility to intervene in those various countries that are facing challenges with democracy and political stability, just because some of these countries, or most of them, are trying to find their partnership elsewhere than the traditional partnership that usually leads to Europe and Western countries.
With all these being said, how do you think the African Union can address the issue of democracy that will prevent many of these countries facing coup and violence from seeking assistance from elsewhere?
This is a question that is difficult, or that will be difficult for the African Union to address, because some of the key elements that will allow any internal or external actor to intervene and help solve this kind of issue is the credibility of that external actor. And when you look at the African Union and you look at the way some of these countries that are concerned perceive the African Union, you understand that there is no much credibility that is given to the African Union, and that could allow the African Union to intervene. So the first thing the African Union could do now is to seek and make room for that credibility. It's to find a way to inspire this country to understand that the idea of African Union is deeply rooted in the institution of the African Union. And this will start by finding the ways and means to fund itself properly, because you could understand that the African Union usually takes a lot of time before showing concern about conflictual issue within Africa. When you look at what happened in Sudan, it took so long for African Union to show concern, especially when African Union was showing concern about what was happening in Ukraine and very far. So all these needs are very important to prepare the African Union to be enough credible to be considered as an actor in terms of helping these countries. But when you look at the reality or the fact on the ground today, it will be extremely difficult for the African Union to be able to intervene and help these countries to find their way through.
Do you see a renewed vigor by African leaders to strengthen the Pan-African organization in achieving its mandate?
It is highly possible. However, when you refer to Pan-Africanism, definitely you are referring to the idea that was supported by Nkrumah and many others that wanted to have this strong African unity in the midst of the African diversity. And this is something that is pragmatically difficult to achieve.
That was Morgan Asogba, an international relations expert and Newslink contributor. Up next is a sports segment with Sankule Janko.
Hello there, a warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Liberia were held to a goalless draw by Sierra Leone in the Under-20 Zonal Championship at home at the Samuel Doe Stadium on Sunday. Both teams failed to convert their chances throughout the 90 minutes. Sierra Leone would hope to make best use of home advantage when they host Liberia on Tuesday. Elsewhere, several Super Eagles players are reportedly not happy with their captain Ahmed Musa, accusing the leader of not fighting for them to be paid out outstanding bonuses and allowances running over 3 years. President Bola Tinubu approved 12 billion nairas so that all these outstanding payments will be cleared with immediate effect, according to media reports. However, the players reportedly received only bonuses for their AFCON qualifying matches against Sierra Leone and Sao Tome and Principe. And Ivory Coast international Simon Adingra brought his AFCON form to club side as he scored twice to help Brighton beat Sheffield United 5-0 in the English Premier League on Sunday. Adingra, who helped Ivory Coast to clinch their third AFCON title recently after beating Nigeria 2-1 in the final, scored in the 78th and 85th minute for the Premier League side. Recall, Simon Adingra won man of the match in the final and also won the Young Player of the tournament following a spectacular performance in the just concluded Africa Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And that's how we wrap up this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudou Diouf for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live on WADR.org. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is a rebroadcast of WADR's flagship health program, Well Body, with Ogi Birika, which will take us to the top of the hour of 1 p.m. for the second edition of our comprehensive news package in French Info Chez Vous. I am Abdoulaye Hassan.